We are here with Steve Hiltner, a writer, a naturalist, a student of all things ecological. And we're here to talk about the Veblen house in Herrontown Woods and what got you interested in the Veblen house, which is a house basically the corner of Herrontown and Snowden, Princeton.
Well, I was getting to know a lot of the nature preserves in town. Used to work for Friends of Princeton Open Space, and so I was getting acquainted. I've done a lot of plant inventories over the years, and so I was out in Herrontown Woods, and I came upon these houses. A lot of people know the cottage that's at a conjunction of a number of the trails, and then there was a house next to that, kind of off to the side, and I was wondering, they were all boarded up, and I was wondering
They look like haunted houses at this point.
Yeah, well, you know, there's definitely boarded up, and yeah, there's a vulture that likes to hang out on the barn next to the cottage, and it can look pretty eerie. But I was wondering, you know, what they were, and so that led me on this whole journey to find out why they were there, why they were closed up, and why no one was taking care of them. So it's been a interesting journey to find out about, you know, first I learned about Oswald Veblen, who's the mathematician, and his wife Elizabeth, who used to live there. And so I learned all about Oswald Veblen, and it was a very compelling story. And
one of the guys at the beginning of the Institute for Advanced Study, friends with Einstein.
Right, he was a mathematician who came to the university, Princeton University, in 1905 under Woodrow Wilson. And he essentially, that was a time when the universities in the U.S. were not very, they were kind of second fiddle to all the European universities. So there's a big effort to build up a good academic world in the U.S. And so he built the math department here at Princeton University back in the 30s, and he was doing all kinds of stuff. The more you look at what he was doing, you realize he was a real visionary. He was working on ballistics during World War I and World War II. He was working on ballistics to get the artillery to be more accurate, so he was helping the war effort. That was a time when, you know, scientists were really helping, working with the government on the war effort, and he did all kinds of stuff. And his grandparents were from Norway, and they were pioneers out in the Midwest, and he came from the Midwest, and he had this real feeling for nature, which I think is unusual. So was mathematics and then nature that he was really interested in, and he ended up essentially founding the open space movement in Princeton. Back in the 30s, he helped preserve about 600 acres. He helped acquire 600 acres that later became the Institute Woods. And then he and his wife were also acquiring Herrontown Woods at that time, which was a lot of different little parcels. Princeton had been broken up into all these little parcels, so he started bringing a lot of these back together into coherent natural areas, and Herrontown Woods is one of those, and they donated it to the county back in 1957. So he was into all kinds of things. He was early on a real facilitator of computer research. So he got the early computers going. Von Neumann, he really encouraged him in his work to develop early computers. So there's a lot of things in our lives really that he had a hand in making possible. He was the one who encouraged the Institute to bring Einstein to town, and in fact he helped bring the Institute for Advanced Study to Princeton, because it was originally to be sited in Newark, and he thought it would be better to have it here, and he was able to convince a lot of people to make some good things happen over the years. So so the more I learned about him, the more I realized that these houses were important to save, and I worked on that. Probably I discovered it around 2007, and I've been on a rather solo journey, pretty much. Although, you know, some people have been able to help try to figure out how we could save it, and so I think it was actually your initiative to to restore all the trails in Herrontown Woods. You and Sally, when you came out this summer to work on the Herrontown Woods trails and at Autumn Hill, that was a real inspiration to me.
Well, the deal with all these, nature parks is that they're dependent on volunteers to maintain them. And
Yeah.
it's not a given that there are volunteers.
Right.
We have volunteer organizations, but sometimes you have to start one.
Yeah.
So, we went in there and said, wow, there's nobody maintaining this.
Mhm.
And it's no one's fault, really.
Mhm.
It's just the way it was. And all the trees were down from Hurricane Sandy and before that, and
Yeah.
there was overgrown stuff. So
Mhm.
we went in there basically every day for a couple months, making the place into a walkable nature reserve.
Right. And I think the important thing here is that you decide, this needs to be done. You identified something in community that needed to be done that government for whatever or other organizations weren't doing. And, those trails had been closed down. These used to be beautiful trails, and they were closed down by all the trees that had fallen across them for probably 3, 4, or 5 years. And then, we got permission from the town, of course, the town staff, and then you just went to it. And it was, that's how things get done. We didn't draw up any elaborate plans or anything like that. We just, went out there and did it.
It's also a creative venture because we're sort of scoping this thing out to be a good walk.
Mhm.
And we're also rediscovering dormant trails that might not have been traversed for 20 years.
Mhm.
They're actually really good trails.
Yeah.
And as you and I were walking out the Blue Trail, which is sort of along Herrontown Road, and we're looking at, changing the course a little bit because the old trail is a little worn out, and we're coming across this old quarry
Yeah.
with blast marks and these
Mhm.
magnificent boulders.
Yeah.
And it's one of the best features of Herrontown Woods, or the boulders. There's a thing called the Boulder Garden.
Right, yeah, you can get to Herrontown Woods by taking Snowden Lane out, and then right where Smoyer Park is, you take a left and you go into the parking lot, and the more you walk up the hill, the bigger the boulders get until you get into these huge boulders and a whole boulder field there where the stream flows through. And it's quite a beautiful place. Every boulder is different, has moss and lichens, and so each one has a different pattern, and it's
One of the things I'm
remarkable
doing is
spot.
that there's a lot of debris on those boulders, so I'm
Mhm.
clearing the things off to
Yeah.
highlight the beauty of it.
Right, you have a vision, and artists, artists are kind of the movers and shakers sometime, and you have this vision for painting, and you look into the community, and you can have a vision for the community as well, and that's that's part of the artistry.
Hey, I'm all about the vista and what I imagine to be the experience of people walking there,
Yeah.
and what would make it an interesting walk,
Right,
and what would keep it interesting, so you'd keep going back there.
right.
One thing about the boulders is interesting. People mostly assume that, how did they get there? Glaciers. They didn't get there from glaciers.
Right.
They got there how?
Well, it's dye-based rock, and a long time ago, I don't know, we're in the Triassic Basin, we're in the Piedmont, and there was this upwelling of molten rock, and through this old seabed, and that rock slowly cooled and became very hard, and so when there was erosion, then the rocks remained, and the way the rocks erode is they turn into these big oval boulders.
So they didn't come out of the ground as ovals.
No,
weathered.
the ground sort of weathered away from them.
Yeah, how many tens of thousands of years are we looking at with that?
That I could not tell you. It's probably 100 million, or
100 million.
It's a lot.
One thing that's interesting is we go through Herrontown Woods and you see all these stone walls that were put together by farmers.
Yeah.
In the late 19th century, there was a farming community out there.
Mhm.
And this was hardscrabble farms, small.
Mhm.
But when I look at the effort it takes to move one boulder,
Yeah.
because we're doing that on some of the trails in
Mhm.
mountain lakes now, boy, I just can't believe the labor and the effort that went into making all those stone walls. The whole Herrontown area is coated with them.
Mhm.
And we're going to make a map
Yeah.
and just put the map up so you can see what it was like to live
Yeah.
there
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the late 19th century.
The soil was not as good out there as in other parts of Princeton, so had a lot of these small farms, self-sufficient, and that's part of the theme that we're trying to bring back is the simplicity of their life. You know, small farms, growing their own food, and that connects to a lot of themes that we have today in terms of growing your own food and trying to simplify life. And, so if we can, save some of those aspects of what's out at Herrontown Woods, it'll, I think, help connect us to the past and also to the future.
One of the aspects of Herrontown Woods that is different from the past are the plants that we call invasives, which have really taken off, and elaborate on that.
Yeah. Well, a lot of them were brought over intentionally. Some were just hitchhiked in soil and that kind of thing. But Princeton, when I first moved to Princeton, the thing I noticed was most of the trees are native, but pretty much all the shrubs, well, a lot of the shrubs and the undergrowth is not native. So you had, a lot of problem because the wildlife prefer to eat the natives. They have not changed their taste buds over the hundreds of years that all these exotics have been introduced. So the wildlife is eating the natives, the exotics come in, they don't get eaten, and so they can really flourish, and they dominate, and then pretty soon you have a habitat that's not edible for the wildlife. So what we're trying to do is remove some of these invasives so that the natives have the sun and the water, they can come back, and especially at Herrontown Woods, because there wasn't any plowing, it's so rocky you couldn't plow. So the memory of the soil is still there. You still have the native seeds, the native plants are still there. And all they need is a little bit of encouragement, a little removal of these exotic shrubs like winged euonymus and privet and multiflora rose. You can get those out of there, then you can really get the natives to come back.
Multiflora rose is the nasty thorns.
Yeah. Can we compare
and you don't want to be near
tear
them.
marks on our arms? Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of ways to get a hold of Steve on the web. One of them is the Princeton Nature Notes. It's a blog with writing various essays, great pictures of the Veblen House from the 1950s, and a long essay on the Veblen House. And there's also a Facebook page, Friends of Herrontown Woods. If you go to Facebook, type in Friends of Herrontown Woods, well, it's a little, call it a website that
Right.
promotes what we're doing.
Something you and Sally put together.
Yes. Well, you're a part of that.